The Chronicles of the Clampets in the Great Metropolis. Come and listen to my story about a man named Jed. He was a poor mountaineer who barely kept his family fed. And then one day, he was shooting at some food, and up through the ground came a bubbling crude.
Oil, that is.
Black gold.
Texas tea.
Well, the first thing you know, old Jed is a millionaire. The kinfolk said, Jed, move away from there. They said, California is the place you ought to be. So they loaded up the truck, and they moved to Beverly
Hills, that is.
Swimming pools. Movie stars. The Beverly Hillbillies. The sun was high over the sprawling landscape of New York City as a sense of urgency took hold of the group. We will miss our plane to New York, someone cried out.
Come on, come on.
Another voice pleaded for a bit of quiet, saying, Gee, please stop yelling. I am doing my best. A question was raised about whether Shorty had arrived with the wagon, but the answer was a disappointing no. Nobody was ready except for one person. The Clavis family was reportedly in the process of buying half of New York from a confidence man, and one member felt stranded in the middle of no place. The tension was palpable. Calm down? You heard what Shorty said. That con man has already sold Central Park, and we have got to get there before they buy the rest of Manhattan. It was a race against time and a massive sum of money. $85 million were hanging in the balance, and only one person was ready to go, except for one small detail. Your trousers, a voice noted, pointing out a missing piece of attire. Excuse me, a man said, asking for a moment of everyone's attention. Friends, before we disembark, there is something I would like to explain. I have long been closely associated with the New York police force. They always loved to see me come to town. A skeptical voice asked if that was a real thing, questioning if these were truly friends. Chums, pals. In fact, the man replied confidently. He explained that when they entered the terminal, several officers might converge upon him and begin to ask questions. What kind of questions? Someone asked. Questions concerning unsolved crimes, he explained. I am considered somewhat of an expert in the field of criminology. I like to help the boys in blue whenever I can. A listener nodded in approval, noting that helping the police seemed like as fine a thing as a fellow could do.
Thank you, the expert replied.
He warned them that he might even be asked to accompany them to headquarters to speak to the captain. The group wondered where they would meet again. Central Park, the man known as Honest John replied. He instructed them to tell the cab driver to take them to the statue of Daniel Webster. Was he kin to you?
Someone asked.
Third cousin, if my memory serves me right, he claimed. And so they set off. My doggies, it happened just the way Mr. Shaker said it would, a voice observed later. Those New York police sure were glad to see him. We no sooner stepped foot in the building than three of them came rushing up to him, grabbed him by the arms, and pretty near carried him out. Apparently, the captain had some tough questions to ask him. Well, he is the one who can answer them. He is a smart fellow. A cab driver asked the remaining group where they wanted to go, wondering if they were staying at a hotel. No, just take us to the piece of property we are buying, Central Park, they replied. The driver was incredulous. You're buying Central Park? Oh, yes, we're going to farm it and raise hogs and chickens and cattle there, they explained. The driver was so shocked he nearly lost control of the vehicle, apologizing for his driving. No offense was taken. As they approached Central Park, the driver asked if there was a particular spot they wanted. Yeah, let us off at the statue of Daniel Webster. That is where Mr. Schaefer said to meet him. Mr. Schaefer is the fellow who is selling us the park. Folks call him Honest John. The driver could only mutter, oh, what else? As they arrived, the fare was $8.40. The group noticed it was still broad daylight, but the driver clarified he was talking about the money owed. Honest John was expected to show them the sights of New York, and the driver sarcastically suggested he take them by Bellevue, saying they would love it there. After paying and telling the driver to keep the change, the group began to explore. They found the statue of Daniel Webster. He must be a pretty famous fellow, Jethro once said. Oh, heck, yeah, Jethro replied.
There is a whole book written about him.
It is called The Dictionary. His sixth-grade education was certainly paying off. Meanwhile, at a police station, a man was being told he had 24 hours to get out of town. He thanked them for nothing and asked about his luggage, which the captain said would be at the airport. The man grumbled about his influence in high places, but the police stood firm. "Remember, we are giving you 24 hours. So long, pals," he said as he left. He reunited with the Clampetts, who were glad to see him. They asked what the police meant by the 24 hours. Honest John quickly made up a story. "Well, you see, ordinarily, New York closes promptly at 9 in the evening.
Lights out.
Well, due to my influence, I have persuaded the police to leave the city open for 24 hours so that you may see it at night." He promised them that Times Square, Broadway, and 42nd Street would all be lit up just for them. The Clampetts were impressed by the park, calling it everything he said it was and more.
"Now I know why they call you Honest John," Jed said.
"A name I have earned by a lifetime of clean living, self-sacrifice, and devotion to my fellow man," the con man replied. Jed expressed his pride in knowing him. The rest of the family was waiting by the lake, and Jethro was curious if there were any fish. Honest John promised them the bouncing fish, an angler's paradise. He mentioned exotic New York fish like gefilte fish and lox. Granny was excited about the lake, thinking they could build a cabin right on the bank and fish out of the window. Honest John continued his pitch, describing the peaceful atmosphere and lovely, neighborly people. Suddenly, a woman screamed for help as some rascals took her pocketbook. Jed and Jethro were ready to jump in, but Honest John stopped them. "No, no, no, friends. That is just a little game they play here called mugging. It is like keep away." He assured them she was not being robbed, as such a thing was unheard of in Central Park. In another part of the city, a man was complaining about paying $50,000 for something he felt was a mistake. His companion told him to think positive, suggesting he might get his money back. He decided the money would come out of her salary of $10 a week, meaning she would have to live another 100 years to pay him back. "You are the greediest, most avaricious man I have ever known," she said. "I will drink to that," he replied. Back at the park, Honest John was ready to talk business. He asked Jed what he thought would be a fair price for Central Park. Jed said he had about $5,000 on him. "That is the price," Honest John declared. Jed felt it was not enough and offered a check, but Honest John insisted on cash, calling it a sacrifice for a friend. Jed counted out $5,000, leaving himself some walking around money. Next, they visited the Statue of Liberty. Honest John offered it to Jed for the paltry sum of $2,000. Jed thought it was a fair price, but worried about moving such a large statue to his park. Honest John, playing the humanitarian, suggested Jed leave it there for everyone to enjoy. Jed agreed, and Honest John, matching his generosity, threw in the island for free. He then offered to sell Jed the Staten Island ferry, claiming he bought it from his friend Alexander Staten. Finally, he mentioned a bridge he picked up at an auction from the estate of Oscar Brooklyn. Back at their campsite, the family was building a fire pit. Jethro returned from a game of mugging with the locals, bringing back an iron pipe, a shiny new chain, and other items. Jed was concerned and told him to take the items back and apologize. Jethro explained that the other players were bad sports and had called him names. Jed went to return the items himself, finding the men behind some bushes. He even offered to fix their bent pipe, much to their confusion and fear. Honest John's time was running out. The police informed him his 24 hours had been shortened to 1. He complained about his constitutional rights, but the police were unmoved. He prepared to leave for Chicago, telling the Clampetts he had a sudden business trip. They were sad to see him go, praising his generosity and his friendship with the police. Granny offered him some groundhog stew for the road. As Honest John headed for the airport in a police car, the Clampetts reflected on the lessons they had learned from him about the joy of sharing. They were proud owners of Central Park, the Statue of Liberty, the Staten Island Ferry, the Brooklyn Bridge, the Empire State Building, and the Algonquin Hotel, which Jed bought as a nice place for Indians to stay. In the end, Honest John felt a rare pang of conscience, or perhaps just a desire to be rid of the burden of the Clampetts' sincerity. He told them he had no use for their money, and told them to give it to the Indians at the Algonquin. As he rode away, the Clampetts stood in their new park, happy and inspired, ready to start their new life in the big city. "The police sure were crazy about him," Jed noted. With good reason, he is a dandy fellow. I hope our paths will cross again.